The C-130 transport aircraft touched down at Fort Bragg with a jarring thud that rattled Lieutenant Kira Thornton's teeth. She'd spent the last 14 hours traveling from Camp Pendleton, California, with nothing but a cryptic set of orders and a classified briefing packet she wasn't authorized to open until arrival. The red, secret stamp on the manila envelope had been her only companion besides her gear bag, her rifle case, and the weight of expectations she carried like body armor. As the cargo ramp lowered, North Carolina's humid air rushed in, thick and suffocating compared to the dry California heat she'd left behind. May in the Carolinas meant moisture that clung to your skin like a second uniform. The kind of wet heat that made you remember why drill instructors loved this place. It broke men down, stripped away pretense, revealed what you were made of beneath the bravado and ribbons. Kira grabbed her duffel and rifle case, stepping onto the tarmac where a young Marine corporal waited with a clipboard and an expression that suggested he'd been standing there long enough to question his life choices. "Lieutenant Thornton?" he asked, checking her ID with nervous efficiency. "That's me." "Welcome to Fort Bragg, ma'am. I'm to escort you directly to the Joint Special Operations Command Building. They're waiting for you." The 15-minute drive across the massive installation gave Kira time to study her surroundings and settle her thoughts. Fort Bragg sprawled across more than 160,000 acres, home to some of the military's most elite units: Delta Force, Special Forces Groups, the 82nd Airborne, JSOC itself. Whatever this selection exercise was, it had pulled talent from across the entire Special Operations community. The weight of that realization settled in her chest like the first round chambered before a long-range shot. The corporal deposited her at a nondescript concrete building surrounded by security fencing and armed guards who looked like they actually knew how to use the weapons they carried. Inside, the air conditioning was cranked so high, Kira could see her breath. A stern-faced lieutenant checked her credentials again before directing her to a locker room. "Stow your gear. You have 15 minutes to change into PTs and report to Briefing Room Alpha. Don't be late." Kira moved with practiced efficiency, changing into her physical training uniform and ensuring her boots were laced tight. She caught her reflection in the mirror. Dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun. Brown eyes that had seen too much combat for someone only 27 years old. A jawline set with determination that came from carrying more than just your own expectations into every room. She'd earned her place in the Marine Corps Scout Sniper program through blood, sweat, and 47 confirmed enemy kills across 3 deployments in Afghanistan and Iraq. Whatever waited beyond that door, she was ready. Or so she told herself. Briefing Room Alpha was already crowded when she entered. 23 candidates stood in loose formation, and Kira's stomach tightened as she realized the truth she'd suspected but hoped might be different. She was the only woman. 23 men, all wearing the physical confidence of elite operators. Broad shoulders, 1,000-yard stares, unit patches that read like a who's who of American Special Operations. Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, Delta Force, Marine Raiders, Air Force Pararescue. Their eyes tracked her movement as she found a spot in the back row. Some gazes were curious, others appraising. A few were openly hostile. Kira kept her expression neutral, her posture relaxed but ready. She'd been the only woman in too many rooms to let it rattle her now. "Attention, on deck!" Everyone snapped to attention as a group of senior officers entered. At the front walked a man Kira recognized immediately from her research during the flight. Colonel Jack Brennan, a legendary Force Recon commander with over 40 years of service. His chest was covered in ribbons, silver stars, bronze stars with valor, purple hearts, a Navy cross. He'd led some of the most dangerous operations in recent military history, the kind that never made the news because they worked exactly as planned. He was also, according to every bit of scuttlebutt she'd gathered, a vocal skeptic of women in combat roles. The scar that ran down the left side of Brennan's face, from temple to jaw, told its own story. Grenada, if the stories were true. An operation that had gone sideways fast. The kind of scar you got from being close enough to the blast to feel God's breath on your neck. Brennan's ice-blue eyes swept the room with the predatory focus of an apex predator. When his gaze landed on Kira, it lingered just a fraction too long. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and something flickered across his face. Not contempt, something deeper, something that looked almost like pain. "Gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying the gravelly authority of someone who'd shouted orders over gunfire for 4 decades. He paused deliberately, and the silence stretched like a tripwire. "And Lieutenant," the words landed like a slap. Not quite mockery, but not quite respect either. A careful neutrality that somehow felt worse than open hostility. Snickers rippled through several candidates. Kira's spine stiffened, but her face remained impassive. She'd heard worse, much worse. Brennan continued, pacing before them like a drill instructor who'd forgotten he wasn't breaking down recruits anymore. "You've been selected to compete for positions on a joint special operations task force. Task Force Sentinel will conduct the most sensitive counterterrorism operations in the most hostile environments on Earth. We need the best of the best, the elite of the elite." He stopped pacing, his eyes returning to Kira with unmistakable skepticism. "Over the next week, you will be tested beyond anything you've experienced. Physical fitness, marksmanship, tactical proficiency, stress management, decision-making under pressure." The room felt smaller suddenly, the air thicker. "Many of you will fail. Most of you will fail. Only 6 operators will be selected for the task force." A tall, broad-shouldered man to Kira's left shifted his weight. His name tape read, Bridger. She recognized the unit patch on his shoulder. Army Delta Force. He caught her eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod, a gesture she interpreted as acknowledgement, maybe even respect. "This is not a participation trophy exercise," Brennan said, the words landing like hammer blows. His gaze once again found Kira. "This is not about diversity quotas or political correctness. This is about operational capability, about warriors who can get the job done when everything goes to hell, about people who belong in combat." The implication hung in the air like cordite smoke after a firefight. Kira's jaw muscles worked, but she maintained her bearing. She'd let her performance speak for itself. That's what she always did. That's what her brother Evan had taught her before his Humvee hit that IED outside Fallujah in 2004. Let the doubters talk. Let them measure you by what they think you can't do. Then show them what you can. "You will be evaluated on every aspect of your performance," another officer added, an Army colonel with a Special Forces tab and the weathered face of someone who'd spent more time in mountain passes than conference rooms. "There are no second chances here, no excuses. You either meet the standard or you're gone." Brennan crossed his arms, the gesture final and uncompromising. "Briefing packets contain your barracks assignments in tomorrow's schedule. PT test begins at 0500. Dismissed, and welcome to Fort Bragg." As the candidates filed out, Kira felt the weight of their stares. Some were measuring her, others dismissing her. A few looked like they were already writing her off as a diversity checkbox that would wash out by day 2. Major Bridger fell into step beside her as they exited the building into the humid evening air. "Major Sam Bridger, Delta," he said quietly, extending his hand. "Don't let them get in your head." Kira shook his hand firmly, matching his grip. "Lieutenant Kira Thornton, Marine Scout Sniper." "I know who you are," Bridger said, his voice low enough that others couldn't hear. "Read your service jacket. 47 confirmed kills, 3 deployments. Navy Cross recommendation for that Overwatch mission in Helmand Province where you held off an entire Taliban assault for 6 hours while your unit extracted wounded." "Recommendation didn't go through, sir." "Politics," Bridger said with disgust. "Point is, you earned your spot here." "Appreciate that, sir." Bridger glanced back at the building they just left, where Brennan stood in a window, watching them. Colonel's old school. He doesn't think women belong in special operations. He's going to look for any reason to cut you. Then I won't give him one. Bridger smiled slightly, the expression transforming his granite features into something almost approachable. Good. We need shooters who can perform, not politicians trying to prove a point. They walked in silence for a moment, boots crunching on gravel. One thing you should know, Bridger said as they approached the barracks. Brennan's bias isn't just institutional, it's personal. Grenada, 1983, his first deployment. He was 19 years old, fresh out of training, thought he knew everything. Kira listened, filing away the information. There was a female intel officer on the mission, Lieutenant Maria Santos. She warned Brennan about enemy reinforcements moving into their position. He dismissed her assessment, followed the official intel instead. Bridger's voice dropped. 4 Marines died in the ambush that followed, including Lieutenant Santos. The pieces clicked together. The scar, the pain in Brennan's eyes when he looked at her, the careful way he'd said, Lieutenant. He blames himself, Kira said. Every day for 43 years, Bridger confirmed, which means he's going to be harder on you than anyone else here. Not because he wants you to fail, because he's terrified you'll succeed and prove his guilt was justified all along. That night, lying in her rack in the austere barracks, Kira stared at the ceiling and thought about ghosts. Her grandfather had been a Marine, served in Korea, came home with frostbite scars and nightmares he never talked about. He taught her father Wade to shoot on their Texas ranch, passing down skills that had nothing to do with trophies and everything to do with survival. Precision, patience, respect for the craft. Wade Thornton had taken those lessons to the Gulf War in 1991, served as a scout sniper with the 1st Marine Division during the ground campaign. He'd come home with a limp, a purple heart, and an unwavering belief that his daughter could be anything she wanted to be, including things the world said she couldn't. Then there was Evan, her younger brother by 2 years, but always the one trying to catch up to her, to match her, to prove he belonged in the same conversation. Evan had followed her into the Marines, pushed himself through infantry training, volunteered for deployment. He'd been 25 when the IED tore through his Humvee outside Fallujah, killing him and 2 others instantly. Kira kept his dog tags in her breast pocket. The metal was warm against her skin now, heated by her body. She pulled them out, reading the inscription by the faint light from the barracks window. CPT, Evan Thornton, USMC, finish the fight, ET. She'd had those last 3 letters added after his death, Evan's initials. A reminder that she wasn't just carrying her own ambitions into every mission, every qualification, every challenge. She was carrying his too. Her phone buzzed. A text from her father. First day tomorrow. Remember what Sergeant Major Daly taught me in '91. Patience beats power every time. You've got this, Kira. Make 'em earn their doubts. She smiled despite herself. Wade Thornton was 78 years old now, confined to a wheelchair after a stroke 3 years ago, had stolen the use of his legs, but none of his spirit. He still watched her career with the intensity of a spotter calling wind corrections, still coached her through phone calls that lasted hours, still believed in her with a ferocity that made her throat tight. Kira typed back, "For Evan, Dad, I'll finish what he started." The response came immediately. "You already have, sweetheart. Tomorrow you just prove it to everyone else." She set the phone down and closed her eyes, controlling her breathing the way she did before a long-distance shot. 4 counts in. Hold. 6 counts out. Heart rate dropping. Thoughts clearing. Focus narrowing to a single point. Tomorrow she'd show them all what a Marine Scout sniper could do. The alarm clock's shrill beep pierced the darkness at 0430. Kira was already awake, had been for the past hour, mentally preparing for what lay ahead. Around her, the other candidates stirred. Some groaned. Others moved with the quiet efficiency of operators accustomed to pre-dawn missions. By 0445, she was dressed, boots laced, mentally rehearsing the physical standards she'd memorized. 2-mile run in full combat boots, pull-ups, push-ups, sit-ups, combat load carry simulation. Nothing she hadn't done 1,000 times before, but everything felt different when 23 men and one skeptical colonel were watching for any sign of weakness. The PT test began in darkness, floodlights illuminating the testing area like a football stadium prepared for a championship game. 24 candidates lined up as a master sergeant with a stopwatch in the build of someone who'd been doing this since before most of them were born, barked instructions. 2-mile run in combat boots, followed by pull-ups, push-ups, sit-ups, and a combat load carry simulation. Standards are posted. Meet them or pack your bags. Move out. The command echoed across the field like a starter pistol at a race, where second place meant nothing. Kira settled into her pace immediately, her breathing controlled and rhythmic. She'd run thousands of miles in these boots, through mountains in Afghanistan, where the air was so thin you felt like you were breathing through a straw, through deserts in Iraq, where the heat turned your lungs into furnaces. This was familiar territory. By the half-mile mark, she'd passed 5 candidates whose bravado exceeded their cardiovascular capacity. By the mile mark, she was in the top third of the pack, maintaining a steady rhythm that ate up ground without burning reserves she'd need for the rest of the day. A Navy SEAL with movie star looks and the kind of confidence that came from never being told no surged past her. His name tape read, Gallagher. "Strong pace, Lieutenant," he said, and there was no mockery in his voice, just statement of fact. Kira didn't waste breath responding. She increased her pace slightly, her legs pumping steadily. As they rounded the final turn with a quarter-mile to go, she kicked into her finishing sprint, crossing the line 3 seconds ahead of Gallagher. Her time, 12 minutes, 47 seconds. Well above the required standard. Exactly 13 seconds slower than the time Evan had posted on this same course 8 years ago. A fact she knew because she'd requested his training records after his death and memorized every number, every qualification, every measure of the brothers she was still chasing. Gallagher doubled over, hands on his knees, breathing hard but grinning. "Damn, your brother ran this in 12:45. Read his file last night. You're chasing his ghost, aren't you?" Kira allowed herself a small smile. "Every day, Captain." "Call me Gallagher. We might be teammates soon." He straightened, extending his hand. "Ryan Gallagher, SEAL Team 6. She shook his hand, reassessing. Not an enemy. Maybe not an ally yet, but not an enemy. Colonel Brennan stood near the testing stations, clipboard in hand, observing with his characteristic intensity. His expression was unreadable, but his pen moved across the paper, recording every detail. Kira approached the pull-up bar, chalked her hands, and jumped up. The cold metal bit into her palms as she executed 20 perfect pull-ups, her chin clearing the bar each time, her form textbook perfect. The standard was 8. She did 20 to eliminate any doubt, any whisper that she'd merely met the minimum. When she dropped down, Brennan was right there, close enough that she could see the faded purple of an old bruise under his left eye. Recent, like he'd been in a scrap within the past week. "Impressive, Lieutenant," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Of course, upper body strength means nothing if you can't handle your weapon systems under stress." "Yes, sir," Kira responded, maintaining eye contact. "Looking forward to demonstrating that next." Something flickered in Brennan's eyes. He didn't like her confidence. Or maybe he did, and that bothered him more. The morning progressed to a brutal series of assessments designed to separate operators from ordinary soldiers. Push-ups. Kira cranked out 72 before the timer stopped. Sit-ups. 89. The combat load carry required candidates to move 200 pounds of gear and dummy ammunition cans across 50 meters of uneven terrain designed to simulate carrying a wounded teammate through hostile ground. Kira completed it without pause, her farmer's daughter's strength from years of ranch work serving her well. Wade had made her haul hay bales from age 12, insisting that real strength came from real work, not just gym time. By 900, they'd moved to the weapons qualification range. Each candidate would fire the M4 rifle, M9 pistol, and M240 machine gun at various distances under time constraints. This was where Kira knew she could dominate. This was home. She stepped to the firing line, her M4 feeling like an extension of her body. The rifle was zeroed to her specifications, familiar as her own heartbeat. Targets popped up at 50, 100, 200, and 300 meters. She engaged each one with methodical precision. Double tap, transition, double tap, transition. Every round found its mark, perfect score. She noticed Brennan speaking to his aide, a Navy lieutenant commander who nodded and made notes. The colonel's expression remained dismissive as he watched her, but she caught him glancing at his clipboard more frequently, comparing her scores to something. The pistol qualification was equally dominant. 48 out of 50 rounds in the center mass zone. The two that strayed were still solid hits, just outside the optimal grouping. More than sufficient for combat effectiveness. Major Bridger, shooting at the adjacent lane, nodded appreciatively. "Damn fine shooting, Lieutenant." "Thank you, sir." "Call me Bridger. We're all operators here." He glanced toward where Brennan stood with his staff. "Well, most of us act like it anyway." The lunch break came at 1300, and candidates filed into a tactical operations center that had been converted into a dining facility. Kira grabbed her tray, grilled chicken, rice, vegetables, water, and found a spot at a corner table. She preferred to eat alone, to maintain focus, to avoid the politics and posturing that infected group dynamics. That's when she heard it. 2 tables away, Colonel Brennan sat with Gallagher and 2 other SEAL candidates. Their voices carried across the room, and Kira realized with a sinking feeling that they weren't trying to be quiet. They wanted her to hear. "She won't make it past the distance trials," Brennan said, his tone matter of fact, like he was discussing weather patterns or equipment maintenance. "All this close-range qualification means nothing. Long-range precision is where we separate the real snipers from the range queens who can punch paper." "Think she'll wash out before then, sir?" one of the SEALs asked. "I'm counting on it." Brennan stabbed his fork into his food with more force than necessary. "This whole exercise is political pressure from Washington, diversity mandates, feel-good metrics that get people killed in the field." He took a drink of water, and Kira saw him staring at something on his phone. His expression shifted. Pain, old and deep. "I've been in combat for 40 years, Brennan continued. "Never once did having a woman on the team make us more effective. Usually the opposite." Kira's grip on her fork tightened until her knuckles went white. She wanted to march over there, wanted to confront him, wanted to tell him about the 47 enemy combatants who died because she was the best person behind the rifle, regardless of what was between her legs. Instead, she took a slow breath and continued eating. Anger was a distraction. Anger made you miss, and she couldn't afford to miss. Bridger slid into the seat across from her, his tray landing with a thud. "You hear that?" "Hard not to," Kira said. "He's sabotaging you before you even get to your specialty. Long-range precision. That's your wheelhouse. He knows it." Bridger leaned forward, voice dropping. "Watch yourself on the distance trials. He'll be looking for any technical violation, any reason to disqualify you." "I'll be clean," Kira said. "I've been shooting long range since I was 12 years old. My father was a Marine sniper in the Gulf War, trained under Sergeant Major John Daly. This is in my blood." Bridger smiled. "Good, because I've seen your service record. You're one of the best marksmen in the Marines, maybe the best. Don't let politics and prejudice take that away from you." The afternoon brought close quarters combat assessments and stress shoots. Scenarios where candidates had to engage targets while being exposed to simulated explosions, smoke, and instructors screaming in their faces. Kira moved through each scenario with controlled aggression, her training taking over, her body moving on autopilot while her mind tracked threats and calculated solutions. During one drill, Gallagher accidentally bumped her while she was transitioning between targets. Whether it was truly accidental or a test, she'd never know. Kira compensated instantly, maintaining her sight picture and engaging the threat without missing a beat. The scenario evaluator, an Army Ranger Master Sergeant with a face like carved granite, noticed. Smooth recovery, Marine. Good situational awareness. By 1800, the first day concluded with tactical movement drills, low crawls, high crawls, buddy rushes under simulated machine gun fire. Kira's uniform was soaked with sweat and covered in mud, but she'd kept pace with every male candidate, outperformed half of them, and proven she could handle the physical demands. As candidates returned to the barracks for equipment maintenance and downtime, Kira cleaned her rifle with meticulous care. 4 candidates had already been cut, 2 for failing physical standards, 2 for weapons qualification failures. 20 remained. Bridger appeared in the doorway of the weapons maintenance room. "Lieutenant, got a minute?" She looked up from her cleaning rod. "Sure, sir." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. His expression was serious. "I need you to understand something. Brennan isn't just biased. He's actively gunning for you. He's already decided you don't belong here. Every test, every qualification, he's looking for the slightest reason to cut you." "I figured that out pretty quick, sir. Tomorrow is urban warfare simulations and team-based exercises. Gallagher will be on your team. That's not an accident." Bridger crossed his arms. "They're going to set you up. False intel, bad comms, maybe even deliberate mistakes that they'll blame on you." Kira's jaw set. "So I need to be perfect." "Better than perfect. You need to be so good they can't deny it. So clean they can't find fault." Bridger paused. "And you need to trust your instincts over their orders. If something feels wrong, it probably is." "Understood." "Good." Bridger turned to leave, then stopped. "For what it's worth, Lieutenant, you've already proven you belong here. Some people are just too blind to see it. Don't let them make you doubt yourself." After he left, Kira sat alone in the maintenance room, the smell of gun oil and solvent filling her nostrils. She thought about Brennan's words at lunch, about being counted as a failure before she'd even reached her specialty. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new obstacles, new attempts to break her. She smiled grimly. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Day 3 dawned with an ominous overcast sky, the kind that promised rain and made everything feel heavy and oppressive. Kira had slept poorly, her mind replaying Bridger's warning about sabotage. She'd learned long ago in combat that paranoia wasn't always a weakness. Sometimes it kept you alive. The morning briefing was conducted by a grizzled Special Forces colonel who outlined the day's challenges. Hostile environment simulations with live fire, explosive charges, and dynamic team-based scenarios designed to test decision-making under extreme stress. "You'll be operating in teams of 2 or 3, the colonel announced. "Team assignments are posted outside. These scenarios will simulate real-world operations where communication breaks down, intelligence is compromised, and you have to adapt or die." Kira checked the roster and felt her stomach tighten. Team Delta, Lieutenant Thornton, Captain Gallagher. Perfect. Brennan's fingerprints were all over this assignment. Gallagher approached with an expression that was harder to read than yesterday's easy confidence. "Looks like we're partners, Lieutenant. You ready for this?" "Born ready, Captain," Kira replied flatly, her tone making it clear she had no illusions about what was coming. The first scenario was a compound clearing operation. Teams had to breach, clear multiple rooms with pop-up targets distinguishing between hostiles and civilians, and secure a high-value target, all while explosions simulated incoming mortar fire and smoke generators reduced visibility to near zero. Colonel Brennan stood at the observation post with his staff, arms crossed, watching through monitor feeds as teams rotated through. His face was carved from stone, revealing nothing. When Team Delta's turn came, Kira and Gallagher received their briefing from the range safety officer. The mission seemed straightforward enough. Breach the compound's east entrance, clear 4 rooms, secure the HVT in the northwest corner office. Intel says hostiles are concentrated in the southern wing, Gallagher said as they geared up with simunition-loaded rifles, paint-marking rounds that hurt like hell but wouldn't kill. We go east, move fast, neutralize threats, grab the target. Kira studied the compound diagram they'd been provided. Something felt off. The east entrance was the obvious approach, but in her experience, obvious approaches were usually kill zones. Her gut screamed ambush. More than that, the floor plan didn't match the entry vector they'd been assigned. "Captain, what if we—" "I'm the senior officer here, Lieutenant," Gallagher cut her off, but his tone wasn't harsh, almost apologetic. "We're going with the intel. That's the play." Kira's mind raced. This was the test Bridger had warned her about. Bad intelligence. An officer insisting on following it. The choice between obedience and operational effectiveness. She thought of Evan, thought of the after-action report she'd read 100 times, how his lieutenant had insisted on following a route that local informants said was mined, how Evan had voiced concerns and been overruled, how the IED had torn through the Humvee 30 seconds later. Never again. The buzzer sounded. They moved. Kira followed Gallagher through the east entrance, her rifle up, scanning corners. Immediately, pop-up targets appeared. Civilians. Elderly man. Woman with a child. Gallagher hesitated, clearly recognizing something was wrong with the scenario, then moved forward without engaging. "East corridor," he called out, moving to the first room. They stacked on the door. Gallagher breached, and instantly hostile targets popped up. 6 of them, a concentration that contradicted the intel about hostiles being in the southern wing. Kira's training took over. She engaged left, double-tapping 3 targets, while Gallagher took the right side, his shots clean and professional. "Contact," she called out, clearing the room with precision. "First room secure." "Second room," Gallagher commanded, breathing slightly harder. "Follow me." But Kira had noticed something during the briefing that was now clicking into place with crystalline clarity. The layout they'd been shown didn't match the actual building structure. The northwest corner office, according to their briefing, would actually be in the northeast based on the entrance they'd used. This was the setup, false intelligence designed to send them in the wrong direction. "Captain," Kira said urgently, "the intel is wrong. The HVT location doesn't match the actual building layout. We need to adjust." Gallagher stopped, turned to face her. For a long moment, he studied her face. Then something shifted in his expression. A decision made. "You're certain?" "Yes, sir. The floor plan shows northwest from a southern approach. We came in east. Target should be northeast." Another explosion rocked the building. Smoke poured through the hallways. They had maybe 3 minutes before time ran out. "Your call, Lieutenant," Gallagher said quietly. "I trust you. Lead the way." The words hit Kira like a physical impact. He was giving her command. In a selection exercise where rank and ego meant everything, he was trusting her judgment over the briefing. "Breaking left," she said. "Northeast office, follow my movement." She moved through the smoke, rifle up, trusting her mental map of the building. 2 hostile targets appeared in a doorway. She engaged both, center mass shots, clean kills. Another target behind a barricade. She fired around the obstacle, hitting the shoulder exposure. The HVT room should be there. She kicked open the door to what should be the northeast office, based on the actual building structure, not the faulty briefing. Inside, a role player sat zip-tied to a chair, surrounded by hostile targets. Kira's training took over. She engaged the threats in a smooth rotation, her muscle memory flawless. 4 targets down in under 3 seconds. "HVT secured," she called into her radio. "Northeast office, not northwest, as briefed." The simulation buzzer sounded. Scenario complete. Gallagher stumbled through the smoke, his face flushed but grinning. Outstanding call, Lieutenant. That was textbook adaptation. The debrief room was tense. All teams assembled as evaluators reviewed the scenarios. Colonel Brennan stood at the front, his expression thunderous. The scar on his face seemed more pronounced somehow, as if old anger was pulling at old wounds. Team Delta, he called out. Interesting performance. Kira stood at attention beside Gallagher. Her heart hammered, but her breathing remained controlled. Brennan consulted his notes. Captain Gallagher, you followed Lieutenant Thornton's assessment over the operational briefing. You deviated from the assigned route. Yes, sir, Gallagher said. Lieutenant Thornton identified a discrepancy in the intelligence. Her assessment was correct. Brennan's eyes shifted to Kira. Lieutenant Thornton, you questioned the operational plan. You ignored the intelligence briefing. You took an unauthorized route. Sir, the intelligence provided didn't match the actual building layout, Kira explained, keeping her voice level. The HVT location was incorrect based on our entry point. I recognized the discrepancy and adjusted to complete the mission objective successfully. Are you suggesting our intelligence officers are incompetent, Lieutenant? Kira's eyes hardened. She could feel the trap closing, but she'd already committed. No, sir. I'm suggesting that in real combat, intelligence is often wrong, and operators need to adapt. I recognized the error and corrected it. Mission accomplished with 0 civilian casualties and perfect target identification. Bridger, who'd been observing from the side of the room, spoke up. Sir, if I may, Lieutenant Thornton's assessment is correct. The briefing diagram showed the HVT in a northwest office, but based on their entry point, that would actually be the northeast corner. She made the correct tactical decision under pressure. Brennan's face flushed. Major Bridger, I don't recall asking for your input. With respect, sir, she completed the objective with 0 errors. That's what we're here to evaluate. Operational effectiveness under stress. The room fell silent. Other candidates watched the confrontation with a mixture of fascination and discomfort. Brennan's prejudice was now on full display, and everyone could see it. Lieutenant Thornton, Brennan said slowly, carefully, in real operations, following orders isn't optional. You don't get to freelance because you think you know better than your commanding officer. In real operations, sir, I've seen good Marines die following bad orders, Kira replied, her voice steady but carrying an edge sharp enough to cut. I've made 47 confirmed kills across 3 deployments because I trust my training and instincts. Today, my instincts were correct, just like they were in Helmand when I held that ridge for 6 hours against a force that outnumbered us 8-1. The tension crackled like electricity before a lightning strike. Brennan stepped closer, and for the first time, Kira saw something in his eyes that wasn't contempt or skepticism. It was recognition and pain. Captain Evan Thornton, Brennan said quietly, 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines, Fallujah, 2004. Kira's breath caught. Yes, sir, you knew him? I pinned his bronze star on his casket. Brennan's voice was rough, like gravel being dragged across metal. He saved 6 Marines that day, stayed on the gun even after the IED hit, provided cover while his team evacuated, died doing what Marines do, protecting his brothers. The room had gone completely silent. Even the evaluators had stopped taking notes. Your brother voiced concerns about the route that day, Brennan continued. His lieutenant overruled him, followed the mission brief exactly as written. The brief was wrong. Evan paid the price. Kira felt tears threatening, but forced them back. Yes, sir. That's why I won't let bad intelligence kill good people. Not if I can help it. Brennan stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded once, sharp and final. Dismiss, Lieutenant. We'll discuss this further, later. The convoy of military vehicles rolled out at 0600, leaving Fort Bragg's humid green landscape behind. 3 hours later, They arrived at a remote desert training facility in the southwestern corner of North Carolina, a sprawling expanse of sand, scrub brush, and hills that the military used for long-range training. The temperature had already climbed to 90 degrees, and heat shimmer danced across the landscape like liquid silver. 19 candidates remained. 4 had been cut after yesterday's scenarios, 2 for safety violations, 1 for failing to complete objectives, 1 who'd simply quit after the physical demands proved too much. Kira had survived, but she could feel the weight of Brennan's scrutiny like a target painted on her back. The range complex was impressive. Multiple shooting positions elevated on berms and ridges, with target systems spread across the valley at distances marked from 500 to 2,500 meters. Beyond that, in the extreme distance, Kira could make out additional target stands that looked like tiny specks even through binoculars. A master gunnery sergeant with a chest full of ribbons and a weathered face that spoke of decades behind a rifle addressed the assembled candidates. "Gentlemen and Lieutenant," he began, nodding respectfully toward Kira. "At least someone here recognized professionalism. Welcome to the Advanced Long-Range Precision course. Today you'll demonstrate your ability to engage targets at extended distances under field conditions." He gestured toward the valley, where heat waves already distorted the air. "You'll each engage targets at 800, 1,200, 1,600, and 2,000 meters. You'll be evaluated on accuracy, wind reading ability, positional stability, and adaptation to changing atmospheric conditions. The desert creates unique challenges: mirage, thermal gradients, unpredictable wind currents." Kira felt her pulse steady. This was home. This was where she excelled. Weapon systems available are the M110 semi-automatic sniper system, the M2010 bolt-action rifle, and for those qualified, the M107 Barrett 50 caliber. You'll have 3 shots at each distance. Scoring is cumulative. Top performers advance to final selection phase. Candidates drew lots for shooting order. Kira drew number 7. Good. Not first to deal with the pressure of setting the pace, but early enough to establish dominance before fatigue became a factor. The first 6 shooters performed competently. Most were SEAL and Army Special Operations snipers with solid fundamentals. Bridger, shooting third, posted an impressive score with hits at all distances, including a remarkable 3 for 3 at 2,000 meters that drew appreciative nods from the evaluators. "Lieutenant Thornton, you're up," the master guns called. Kira selected the M2010, a rifle she knew intimately. She'd put thousands of rounds through this weapon system in training and combat. The weight, the trigger pull, the way it recoiled. Everything was familiar, comfortable, like greeting an old friend. She settled into position at the 800-meter line. The spotting scope showed a steel torso target wavering in the heat. Kira checked her data book. Temperature 92 degrees. Barometric pressure 29.92. Humidity 18%. She licked her finger and held it up, feeling the wind kiss the moisture. 5 to 7 miles per hour, left to right. Her first shot broke cleanly. The distinctive ping of steel echoed back across the valley. Dead center. 2 more shots, 2 more hits. The evaluators recorded her score, 3 for 3 at 800. She moved to the 1,200-meter line. The target was smaller now, the wind more variable. Kira took her time reading the mirage through her scope. The heat shimmer told stories if you knew how to read them. The way they boiled or laid flat. The angle of their movement. Her father had taught her this, sitting on their Texas ranch, shooting at prairie dogs at distances that seemed impossible when she was 12 years old. "Wind's picking up," she murmured to herself. 8 to 10, quartering left. Shot. Ping. Hit. Shot. Ping. Hit. Shot. Ping. Hit. 3 for 3 at 1,200, the evaluator announced. Colonel Brennan had moved closer to the firing line now, watching through high-powered binoculars. His expression was unreadable, but Kira could feel his presence like storm clouds gathering. The 1,600-meter line required even more precision. At this distance, bullet drop was significant, over 500 inches, and the wind could push the round several feet off course. Kira calculated mentally, adjusted her scope, and controlled her breathing. 3 shots, 3 hits. The steel sang its metallic song each time. Murmurs rippled through the candidates. Bridger caught her eye and nodded approval. Finally, the 2,000-meter line. At this distance, the target looked impossibly small. A thin, vertical rectangle of steel, barely visible even through her scope. The bullet would take nearly 3 seconds to reach the target, traveling in a parabolic arc that had to account for gravity, wind, air density, and even the Coriolis effect of the Earth's rotation. Kira settled in, her body becoming one with the rifle. She read the conditions, made her calculations, and trusted her training. The first shot felt perfect as it broke. She watched through the scope as the bullet traced its invisible path across the valley. 3 seconds later, ping, hit. The second shot was equally clean. The third shot, she rushed fractionally, her breathing not quite settled. The round impacted low, just catching the bottom edge of the target. Still a hit, but not perfect. 3 for 3 at 2,000 meters, the evaluator called. Perfect score, 12 for 12. It was the highest score of the day so far. As Kira cleared the firing line, Brennan approached with 3 other senior officers. His expression had shifted from dismissive to calculating. He exchanged quiet words with his staff, then turned to address all the candidates. "Outstanding shooting today," Brennan announced, his voice carrying across the range. "Lieutenant Thornton, Lieutenant Rutledge, and Major Bridger have posted perfect or near-perfect scores. Impressive under standard conditions." Kira's instincts prickled. That qualifying phrase, standard conditions, carried weight. However, Brennan continued, real operations rarely provide standard conditions. Our enemies don't give us perfect weather, stable positions, or controlled environments. They force us to adapt. To perform under circumstances that would make most shooters fail, he gestured to his aide, who brought forward a case. Inside lay an M107 Barrett .50 caliber rifle, 32 pounds of precision engineering designed to reach out and touch targets at extreme distances. "I've prepared a special demonstration for our top 3 shooters," Brennan said, a thin smile playing at his lips. "A test that separates the range shooters from the true masters of the craft." Bridger shot Kira a warning glance. This was the setup. Brennan continued, "The test has 2 components. First, you'll field strip and reassemble the M107 blindfolded. This tests your technical mastery and ability to handle weapons maintenance under stress or in darkness." Several candidates shifted uncomfortably. The M107 was a complex weapon system, not something most people could disassemble and reassemble blind. Second, Brennan's smile widened, you'll engage a target at extreme distance, 2,800 meters. That's well beyond the rifle's typical effective range and requires perfect execution in these desert conditions. Kira's mind raced. 2,800 meters was nearly 1.75 miles. At that distance, variables multiplied exponentially. The shot was theoretically possible, but extraordinarily difficult. "I'll demonstrate first," Brennan announced. He had his aide blindfold him, then approached the M107 laid out on a table. His hands moved with practiced confidence. Bolt carrier group out. Barrel assembly released. Trigger mechanism disengaged. Each component came apart in sequence. He cleaned critical parts with a rag, then reassembled everything. When he removed the blindfold, he checked his work and nodded. 4 minutes, 12 seconds, an evaluator called. Brennan moved to a shooting position with an exceptional view of the valley. Kira could see a target stand at extreme distance, barely visible even with magnification. The colonel settled behind the massive rifle, took his time reading conditions, and fired. The report was thunderous. The .50 caliber round's muzzle blast kicked up dust in a massive cloud. Seconds ticked by. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, before the radio crackled. Impact at 2,200 meters. No hit on the 2,800-meter target. Brennan stood, his expression neutral. A solid attempt. The conditions at that range are extremely challenging. 15-mile-per-hour crosswinds with variable gusts. Extreme mirage in temperature gradients. He turned to face Kira directly, his ice-blue eyes locked on hers. Lieutenant Thornton, you've demonstrated competency at standard ranges. Let's see if you can perform at a level that truly matters. His voice carried a challenge that everyone present could hear. Can you field strip the M107 blindfolded? Can you handle a weapons system designed for operators with strength and size that you clearly lack? The insult hung in the air, a direct attack on her physical capability. And can you make a shot that I, with 40 years of sniper experience, just missed? Brennan's smile was predatory. Or should we just end this charade now and admit you're out of your depth? The other candidates watched in stunned silence. This had gone beyond professional evaluation into personal confrontation. The line had been crossed so blatantly that even the evaluators looked uncomfortable. Kira met his gaze without flinching. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her voice was steady as bedrock. I'm ready, sir. Brennan's expression flickered with surprise. He'd expected her to back down, to make excuses, to decline the challenge and preserve what dignity remained. Then step up, Lieutenant, he said quietly. Show us what you've got. As Kira approached the table where the M107 lay like a gauntlet thrown down, she heard a commotion at the edge of the range. A vehicle had arrived, a wheelchair-accessible van. The door opened and a figure emerged. Gunnery Sergeant Wade Thornton, 78 years old, confined to a wheelchair but with eyes that burned with the same intensity they'd carried through the Gulf War 3 decades ago. Her father had come. The candidates stood straighter. Even Brennan's posture shifted. A living legend had just rolled onto their range. Wade's chair moved forward, pushed by a young Marine corporal who looked honored just to be touching the handles. The old gunny wore his dress blues despite the heat, his chest covered with ribbons that told a story of service spanning decades. Colonel Brennan, Wade said, his voice still carrying authority despite his age. Gunnery Sergeant Wade Thornton, 1st Marine Division, Gulf War. Brennan came to attention and saluted. Gunnery Sergeant, this is an honor, sir. Wade returned the salute, then his eyes found Kira. Pride blazed there, mixed with something else. A challenge, a reminder. That's my daughter, Colonel, Wade said. Trained her myself. Same way Sergeant Major John Daly trained me in 1991. Patience, precision, respect for the craft. I can see that, Gunny, Brennan replied. She's exceptional. You lost men in Grenada, Wade said, and the statement landed like artillery. Lieutenant Maria Santos warned you about that ambush, didn't she? Brennan froze. The color drained from his face. How did you? Because I lost men in the Gulf when I didn't listen to a female corpsman's medical advice, Wade said. His voice was gentle but unyielding. She told me my Marine had internal bleeding. I thought she was being overcautious. He died 6 hours later in a field hospital. Wade wheeled closer to Brennan, and despite the colonel's standing height advantage, somehow the old gunny seemed taller. We both carry ghosts, Jack, Wade said, using Brennan's first name with the earned familiarity of shared trauma. Don't let yours destroy my daughter's future. Test her fairly, not harder, not easier, fair. Brennan's jaw worked. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he nodded once, sharp and final. Fair, he agreed. Kira picked up the blindfold. The desert sun beat down on her shoulders. Every eye was on her. Her father, the colonel who wanted her to fail so he could prove his biases right. The candidates who'd already written her off. And somewhere, she knew, Evan was watching too. She tied the blindfold over her eyes, plunging her world into darkness. The blindfold settled over Kira's eyes. The desert sounds amplified immediately. Wind rustling through scrub brush. The distant flutter of range flags. The breathing of 19 candidates watching her every move. Her father's wheelchair, a faint creak of metal as he shifted position. Her fingers found the cool metal of the M107 Barrett rifle. 32 pounds of precision engineering, a weapon system designed for reaching out to extreme distances. Beginning disassembly, she announced. Her hands moved to the rifle's receiver, fingers reading the metal like braille. Right hand found the charging handle, pulled it back, locked the bolt to the rear. Safety check. Chamber empty. Left hand located the takedown pins. The first pin slid out smoothly, placed precisely on the table. Breathe. Trust your training. Her father's voice echoed in memory. She was 14 again, on their Texas ranch, the sun beating down. Wade had placed a disassembled rifle before her and tied a bandana over her eyes. A rifle is more than steel and polymer, he'd said. It's a conversation between you and physics. You must know your weapons so well you can take it apart in the dark, because someday your life will depend on it. Kira's fingers found the barrel assembly lock, rotated it counterclockwise. The barrel assembly separated from the receiver. Each piece came apart in sequence. Bolt carrier group, operating rod, bolt, recoil spring assembly, the trigger mechanism with its smaller pins and delicate springs. 2 minutes, the evaluator called. Her hands moved faster, cleaning the bolt face, wiping down gas system components. Reassembly began. Trigger mechanism, pins sliding home, recoil spring, bolt carrier, operating rod, barrel assembly aligned, lock rotated clockwise, charging handle, function check. The action cycled smoothly. 3 minutes, 47 seconds, the evaluator announced. Kira removed the blindfold, cycled the action visually. Perfect. 25 seconds faster than Brennan. The candidates erupted in murmurs. Wade's face split into a proud smile. That's my girl. Brennan's jaw tightened. Acceptable. Now for the real test. Kira shouldered the M107. The rifle was heavy, but she'd carried heavier loads through mountains. She moved to the firing position, a reinforced platform overlooking the valley. The 2,800-meter target was barely visible, a small steel rectangle shimmering in the heat. Through the scope, she could see it better, though mirage distorted the image. 24 by 48 inches. At 28 meters, it appeared smaller than a postage stamp. She settled into prone position, loaded a single .50 caliber round, chambered it, engaged the safety. Now comes the hard part. Distance, 2,800 meters, 3,062 yards, 1.74 miles, 5 seconds of flight time. 5 seconds for gravity and wind to push the round off target. Elevation adjustment. The round would drop over 1,200 inches, 100 feet. She dialed her scope, counting each click. Wind was the bigger problem. Flags showed 12 to 15 miles per hour, quartering left to right, variable across the distance. She watched the mirage for a full minute, reading the heat shimmer, temperature 94 degrees, barometric pressure dropping, humidity 16%. All of it fed into her mental calculator. You planning to shoot sometime today, Lieutenant? Brennan's voice carried sarcasm. Kira ignored him. The shooter who rushes is the shooter who misses. She made her windage adjustment. 6 minutes of angle right. Checked her natural point of aim. Breathing slowed. 4 counts in. Hold. 6 counts out. Heart rate dropped below 50. The rifle became an extension of her body. Through the scope, the target danced in the mirage. She waited for a lull in the wind. The leftmost flag dropped. Now. But the middle flag still showed strong wind. She waited. The middle flag dropped. Finger took up trigger slack. 2 pounds on a 3-pound trigger. Sight picture. Breathing. Trigger press. The M107 roared. Massive muzzle blast. Dust cloud. Substantial recoil into her shoulder. Through the scope, she tracked the bullet's trace. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi. The radio remained silent. Impact 2 feet left of target, the spotter crackled. Near miss at 2,800 meters. Kira's heart sank. 2 feet. Close, but close didn't count. She was already correcting. The wind had shifted. She adjusted her scope. 1 more minute of angle right. Request permission for a second shot, sir. Brennan looked surprised. You get 1 shot, Lieutenant. That's what combat gives you. With respect, sir, Kira interrupted. You said this was a demonstration. Every sniper confirms data with multiple shots. Basic field procedure. What Sergeant Major Daly taught my father. What's in every manual. The candidates watched. Brennan's face reddened. She was right. To deny her would expose his bias completely. Wade wheeled forward. Colonel, the lieutenant is correct. Even the best snipers take confirming shots. It's not about pride. It's about mission effectiveness. Brennan's eyes moved from Kira to Wade and back. The desert held its breath. Then the colonel exhaled. Fine. 1 more shot. Make it count. Kira chambered another round, settled back into position. She'd made her correction. Now she just needed to execute. Breathing slowed. The world narrowed. Target, wind, distance. The trigger broke like glass. The M107's thunderous report echoed across the desert. The rifle bucked. Through the scope, she tracked the bullet's path. A subtle distortion in the air. 1 Mississippi. The round screamed across the first 1,000 meters. 3,000 feet per second became 2,000 as air resistance bled energy. 2 Mississippi. Her heart beat once. Slow, steady. Her father's teaching. You don't fight physics, you dance with it. 3 Mississippi. The bullet reached apex and began descent. Gravity pulling it downward. Every atmospheric variable either guiding it true or pushing it astray. 4 Mississippi. Brennan stood behind her, binoculars pressed to eyes, jaw clenched. Every prejudice he'd held hung in the balance. Bridger barely breathed. The candidates stopped pretending to do anything else. Wade gripped his wheelchair armrests, knuckles white. 5 Mississippi. The bullet had traveled 1.74 miles through imperfect air, encountered thermal layers, pushed through variable wind, spun at 150,000 RPM, dropped below supersonic speed, and then the target rang like a church bell. The distinctive clang of copper-jacketed lead striking steel carried back with beautiful clarity. Through her scope, Kira saw the target shudder, saw the paint puff, dead center. For one frozen moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then the radio crackled. Direct hit. Confirmed impact. Center mass at 2,800 meters. Target neutralized. The dam broke. Rutledge whooped. Candidates erupted in applause and cheers. Operators recognizing exceptional performance. The Brotherhood honoring mastery. Bridger grinned. Outstanding, Lieutenant. Outstanding. Kira safed the rifle, cleared the chamber, stood slowly, legs shaky, adrenaline catching up. She turned to face Brennan. The colonel stood motionless, binoculars still raised. His face had journeyed from skepticism to shock to something harder to define. The certainty he'd carried had just been shattered as definitively as that steel target. Slowly, Brennan lowered the binoculars. His ice-blue eyes met Kira's dark ones. Several long seconds passed. Neither spoke. The desert wind picked up. A raven called. That was... Brennan's voice was rough. He stopped, cleared his throat. That was exceptional shooting, Lieutenant Thornton. It wasn't an apology, but coming from a man who'd spent 3 days trying to sabotage her, those 5 words represented a seismic shift. Kira came to attention. Thank you, sir. Where did you learn to shoot like that? Genuine curiosity in his voice now. My father, sir. Gunnery Sergeant Wade Thornton, Gulf War sniper, trained under Sergeant Major John Daly. He taught me shooting is about patience, not strength. Brennan absorbed this, looked at Wade. Something passed between the two men. Recognition, understanding. Your father taught you well. Yes, sir, I'm continuing his legacy, and my brother's. She touched the dog tags. Captain Evan Thornton, KIA Fallujah, 2004, training to be a scout sniper when he died. Something flickered in Brennan's eyes. Recognition of service and sacrifice that transcended prejudice. He nodded slowly. Walk with me, Lieutenant. They moved to a small rise overlooking the valley. Wade wheeled after them. Brennan didn't object. The three of them stood together in the desert heat. Brennan was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low. Grenada, October 1983. Operation Urgent Fury. I was 19, fresh out of training, thought I knew everything. He paused. There was a female intel officer, Lieutenant Maria Santos, 24 years old, brilliant analyst. Kira listened. We were tasked with securing a communications facility. Official intel said enemy forces were southeast. Our approach would be lightly defended. Brennan's jaw tightened. Maria disagreed. She'd been talking to locals. She said enemy squad was moving into position northwest, setting up an ambush. The wind picked up. I dismissed her, Brennan continued, told her command intel took priority over hunches. We executed as briefed. His voice dropped. Walked right into the ambush Maria predicted. RPGs, heavy machine guns, pinned down in seconds. Wade's hand gripped his armrest. 4 Marines died, Brennan said, including Lieutenant Santos. Shrapnel from an RPG. I was 10 feet away, close enough to hear her last words. What did she say? Kira asked quietly. Brennan's eyes were distant. She said, tell them I was right. Then she died. Heavy silence. I've carried that guilt every day for 43 years, Brennan said. Every time I saw a female officer, I saw Maria, saw my failure. When you walked into that briefing room, you terrified me, because if you succeeded, it meant my guilt was justified. That Maria could have saved us if I'd listened. He turned to Kira. I've spent 3 days trying to make you fail, and you beat every challenge. You adapted when your team leader wanted to follow bad briefing. You made shots veteran snipers would envy. And just now, you made a shot I couldn't make. He extended his hand. I owe you an apology, not just for 3 days, but for 43 years of letting guilt poison judgment. You've proven what Maria tried to prove. Capability has nothing to do with gender. Kira shook his hand. Sir, my brother died because someone didn't adapt. He voiced concerns and was overruled. The IED killed him. I promised I'd never let that happen if I could help it. That's why I questioned the briefing, not to prove anything about gender, just to save lives. Brennan nodded. Your brother would be proud. I was at his funeral. I pinned his bronze star on the casket. Wade spoke. Colonel, we've both lost people because we didn't listen. My daughter just taught both of us that the only thing that matters is capability, not bias, not politics, just who can get the job done. Brennan looked at Wade with respect. You raised an exceptional Marine, Gunny. I raised a warrior, Wade corrected. Same way Daly taught me, same way you learned in Grenada, even if the lesson cost too much. They stood together, 3 generations of warriors finding common ground. Brennan straightened. Lieutenant Thornton, tomorrow the selection board convenes. I'll recommend you for Task Force Sentinel, accelerated promotion, and advanced leadership positions. You could shape the future of special operations. Kira was stunned. Sir, I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep proving me wrong. Say you'll challenge assumptions. Say you'll train the next generation better than we trained yours. I will, sir. I promise. Brennan extended his hand. Then I look forward to serving with you. 6 months later, undisclosed location along the Syrian border. Lieutenant Kira Thornton lay motionless on a rooftop 2,400 meters from the target building. Her M107 Barrett positioned perfectly. Beside her, Major Bridger worked the spotting scope. Wind steady at 8 knots, right to left. Temperature 52, barometric pressure stable. Copy, Kira whispered. Through the optics, she could see the compound's third-floor window. Intel indicated their high-value target would appear at sunrise. The man had orchestrated attacks killing dozens of coalition forces and hundreds of civilians. The operation had been planned over 6 weeks. Ground forces led by Gallagher were positioned to assault, but a heavy machine gun emplacement overlooked the only approach route. That gun had to be neutralized first. That's where Kira came in. Colonel Brennan's voice crackled from the TOC 15 kilometers away. 6 months had transformed their relationship from adversarial to seamlessly professional. Overwatch, this is command. Ground element in position. 15 minutes to sunrise. Status. Kira keyed her radio. Command, Overwatch. Good visibility on target Alpha. Machine gun position. Range 2,400 meters. Conditions favorable. Standing by. Copy. A pause. Thornton, I need your best. Lives depend on it. Confirm you have the shot. The weight of those words, not just tactical, but personal. Brennan trusting her completely. The colonel who'd mocked her 6 months ago now placed the operation's success in her hands. I have the shot, sir. Bridger adjusted the scope. Target personnel moving. 2 combatants, 1 on gun, 1 feeding ammo. Through her scope, barely visible in low light, dark shapes against darker shadows. Her night vision overlay gave just enough contrast to identify center mass. The gunner was priority. Take him out, the second would be disoriented, giving ground forces seconds to advance. Final calculations. Distance 2,400 meters. Wind 8 knots right to left. Elevation 47 feet above target. Temperature cool. Humidity low. 10 minutes to sunrise, Bridger reported. Ground element ready on your shot. Breathing control. 4 counts in. Hold. 6 counts out. Heart rate below 50. Rifle became extension of body. Darkness fading at edges. Pre-dawn twilight. 15 minutes until sun breached horizon. Window closing. Overwatch cleared hot, Brennan's voice. Execute when ready. Copy, cleared hot. World narrowed. Compound. Machine gun. 2 targets, nothing else existed. The target moved behind the gun, settling into position. Perfect. Stationary now. Clear profile. Finger took up slack. 2 pounds on 3-pound trigger. Crosshairs on center mass. Steady. Breathe. Press. The M107 roared. Shattered pre-dawn silence. Massive recoil. Through the scope, tracked the bullet. Nearly 5 seconds flight time. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi. Hit, Bridger called calmly. Target down. Secondary scrambling. Gun position neutralized. Path clear. Ground element execute, Brennan commanded. Shadows moved below. Assault force surging forward. Reached compound walls in seconds. Breaching charges. Flashbangs. Choreographed violence unfolding exactly as planned. Kira maintained overwatch. Scanning for threats. Ready to support. 12 minutes later. Target secured. All friendly forces accounted for. 0 casualties. Outstanding work, Overwatch. Extraction smooth. By sunrise, entire task force exfiltrated. Left behind only brass casings and consequences of American precision. 3 months later, Marine Corps Scout Sniper School, Quantico. Lieutenant Kira Thornton stood before a classroom. 12 men, 6 women, all hungry to prove themselves. This was her new assignment, training the next generation. A rotation Brennan had personally arranged. She held an M110 rifle. The shot is the easy part, she told them. Anyone can squeeze a trigger. What separates adequate from exceptional is everything before. Preparation, calculation, patience. Students watched with rapt attention. Some knew her reputation. The 2,800-meter shot had become legendary, but more, they knew she'd broken barriers. You'll face doubt, Kira continued. People will question whether you belong, whether you're capable. Some doubt from others, some from yourself. She set down the rifle, made eye contact with the women specifically. Don't let doubt define you. Let performance speak. Master fundamentals. Respect the craft. Prove yourself every day, not to shut up critics, but because you owe it to yourself and people who depend on you. A female student raised her hand. Ma'am, how did you deal with people who didn't think women should be snipers? Kira smiled slightly. I made a 2,800-meter shot in front of them. But more importantly, I refused to accept their limitations as my own. Someone wise told me capability is what matters, not gender, not politics, just capability. Through the window, she saw Brennan crossing the grounds. He'd become the task force's most vocal advocate for expanding opportunities, had testified before Congress, using Kira's performance as a case study. He looked up. Their eyes met. He nodded. Respect between warriors. Kira turned back. Let's get on the range. Time to see what you're made of. As candidates gathered gear, chattering excitedly, Kira touched the dog tags. Evan's tags. Her brother's legacy. She thought of Wade, now 80, who'd started this journey by placing a rifle in a 12-year-old's hands. He'd called last night, voice weak but proud, telling her about volunteering at a stroke survivor support group. You broke more than records, Mija, he'd said. You broke minds open, made people see what they should have seen all along. Barriers hadn't all fallen, still resistance, still prejudice, still battles. But the wall had cracks, light shining through. Every candidate she trained represented another crack, another ray, another step toward a future where capability was the only standard. On the range, a female student engaged a target at 800 meters. First attempt. Hit. Kira smiled. Outstanding. Now do it again. Consistency separates good from great. The student nodded, already chambering another round, face set with determination Kira recognized. Same determination she'd carried, same refusal to accept others' limitations. Late that afternoon, ranges quiet, students dismissed, Kira found herself alone at the 1,000-yard line. She'd brought her personal rifle, the same M107 from Fort Bragg 6 months ago. Settled into position, not to qualify or prove anything, simply to feel the familiar weight. Reconnect with fundamentals. A vehicle approached, Wade's wheelchair van. He emerged, pushed by the same Marine corporal. Wade's health had declined. The stroke had taken more, but his eyes still burned with warrior fire. Thought I'd find you here, Wade said. Can't stay away from the long gun. It's where I feel most myself, where everything makes sense. Wade smiled. Your mother said that about her piano. I feel that way about shooting. You do too. They sat in comfortable silence. Got news today, Wade said. They're naming the new sniper range after Sergeant Major Daly. Dedication in 3 months. They want us there. I'd be honored, Dad. There's more. They're establishing a scholarship in your name. The Thornton Santos Memorial Scholarship. For female candidates entering sniper programs. Named for you and Lieutenant Santos. Kira felt tears threatening. Dad, I don't... You earned it, Wade interrupted gently. Not just with that shot, with every day you refused to quit. Every challenge you turned into opportunity. Every barrier you broke not by demanding recognition, but by being undeniable. He took her hand, grip still strong. I'm proud, Kira. Your mother would be proud. Evan is proud. And somewhere Lieutenant Santos is proud. You finished what she started, proved what she died trying to prove. Warriors come in all forms. The only thing that matters is who can get the job done. Kira squeezed his hand. Unable to speak past the lump, Wade's phone buzzed. He checked it, smiled. Text from Brennan. Task Force Sentinel has new mission. High priority target in Yemen. They need their best shooter on Overwatch. When? 2 weeks. Finish this training cycle. I'm ready. This is what I do. What we do. We serve. Wade nodded approvingly. That's my warrior. As sun began to set, painting Quantico in amber and gold, Kira loaded a single round. Not for qualification, not for demonstration, just for herself. Settled into position, found breathing rhythm, engaged target at 1,200 meters. Shot felt perfect. Ping echoed back. Hit. Wade watched with expert eye. Still got it. Always will. You taught me too well to ever lose it. They stayed until full darkness, talking about missions past and future, lessons learned, wisdom gained, cost of service, honor of the uniform, breaking barriers not through anger, but through undeniable excellence. Finally packing up, Wade said one more thing. You know the best part, Kira? What's that? In 20 years, what you did won't be remarkable. It'll be normal. Female snipers will be so common, nobody will question it. That's when we'll know we succeeded. When excellence is just excellence, regardless of who's behind the rifle. Kira smiled. That's the goal, to become unremarkable. To become normal, Wade corrected. To have capability be the only thing that matters. They drove back through darkening Virginia countryside, ranges fading behind. Ahead lay new missions, new challenges, new opportunities to prove what should never have needed proving. But Kira Thornton had never shied from challenges, never backed down from doubt, never accepted others' limitations as her own. She was a Marine, a sniper, a warrior, and she'd shown an entire institution that the rifle didn't care who held it. It only cared about fundamentals. Everything else was just noise, and noise didn't affect the shot. The mission was all that mattered, had always mattered, would always matter. The rest was details. And Lieutenant Kira Thornton had proven, beyond any shadow of doubt, that she had the details mastered. 2,800 meters, one shot, one kill. The Thornton legacy continued. The mission endured. And somewhere, Captain Evan Thornton and Lieutenant Maria Santos were watching with pride. The fight was finished, and it had been finished well.